So let's get started. Really excited about this. This is the advisors year-end prep camp. I guess it's not a boot camp. I might refer it to that because we had one earlier this year for controller boot camp. Really excited about this session. We've got a lot of great speakers. Again, take time to introduce yourself in the chat. You've done that, but if you haven't, please do. For me personally, at least in my session, I'd like to make it as interactive as possible. So feel free to message in chat and ask questions and all of that fun stuff. That's the whole point of this, is to give people some information, give them some learnings. Hopefully you can have some takeaways and make the beginning of next year a lot nicer than maybe it might be otherwise. Depending on the moderator and the presenter, they might want some of the questions in the Q&A tab. For me personally, again, I'll take mine in the chat. And these sessions will be recorded. So for those of you who can't join us, or if you can't join all of the sessions, that's okay. We will be sending them out after this event. Here's the itinerary, the schedule for today. We'll start off with myself. Lucky everybody. Get to listen to me for about half an hour to 40 minutes, dribble and drabble. And then right after that, we'll have Jenny Blake, who I'm actually really excited about. She's going to talk about kind of change management, how to improve yourself and your firm and people that you work with to make life just so much nicer. That kind of topic is really near and dear to my heart. I like to talk about it myself and think about it and read about it. So I actually am really excited about that topic. Not that I'm not about Nick Marston from Tax Cycle and Xero. I very much am. He'll be talking to us today about how you can use different systems, Xero and Tax Cycle, in order to improve your year-end process and your tax filings. And then at 12 p.m. MST, so depending where you're at, that'll change. We've got Nick Sinclair from TOA, and Nick's a great guy as well. Lots of really good insights and education that he can provide around essentially team management and team building and how to make your life just generally better using other people and using your team and really becoming great in that way. So that's the agenda today. Most of the panelists will have around 50 minutes. We're going to try to give everybody 10 to 15 minutes before the next session starts so that you can go fill up your coffee, go to the bathroom, all of that kind of fun stuff. So I think that gets me right into my session. Lucky everybody. So I will be talking today about how to start confident advisory conversations with your clients during year end. That's a very wordy title, so I do apologize for that. But we do find that when it comes to advisory, it's a very ubiquitous, all-encompassing term. People really don't understand it, and it really kind of clutters up exactly what things could look like for your client if things were more clear and if you had more confidence, essentially knowing what you're talking about. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Specifically, we're going to cover why you are, everybody listening to this and everybody watching it on video recording, why you are the most qualified person. It's not an actual question, that is a statement of fact, because we do find that people sometimes question, should I be the one actually talking to my clients about this kind of stuff? We'll talk about it, and you are is the nuts and bolts of it. We'll also talk about specific questions you should be asking both yourself and your clients that'll help make advisory different and easier, I should say, not different, but make it easier. And we'll specifically be talking about cash flow forecasting and cash management, obviously, because we're Helm and that's what we're all about. But you can take these learnings and apply them to any kind of advisory, to be quite frank. We'll also talk about why year end is the best time of year to be having these conversations with your clients. It is the busiest time of year, probably really stressful, but there are definitely some advantages to having these conversations with clients around this time of year. And there's some advantages for yourself as well. And we'll talk about packaging, pricing, and how to make the offer. And that's a lot of information to be covering in one topic, in one session. So we won't be getting too in depth in any of it. We'll be just touching loosely, but hopefully providing enough insight and advice that you'll be able to take some stuff away. And I apologize if I'm not looking directly in the camera, which is right there. I'm just kind of reading notes and looking at the chats and doing a bunch of different stuff. So hopefully that doesn't bug people. So just some general bookkeeping for this particular session, for my session. I do want to keep it a little bit short. Again, just give everybody some time. I also do want to make sure that everybody, we've got 12 people live. Make sure you're writing notes and thinking about different questions, because I'll have about 10 minutes of live Q&A at the end, and you can literally ask me anything. So stay awake, and hopefully I keep you entertained, and you'll have lots of questions, and you can ask those at the end of the session. We'll also have some interactive questions kind of during the session, just so I can make sure that you're awake and that coffee's kicking in. So please use the chat tool for that. It is working. So sometimes we forget to turn it on properly. It looks like it is working. So perfect. And we've already said hi. So I think we can skip that. So hopping right into it, why should you listen to me? Maybe you shouldn't. Again, we're going to be talking about how to have confident advisory conversations with your clients. So a little bit about myself is we started 2080. I call it a consulting firm here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We started it in 2014, so 8 years ago. It's been a while. We started Helm around 3 to 4 years. So if you go back the 8 years, I really got into accounting and consulting and bookkeeping because I saw the gap that probably a lot of you people do. Small business owners are really great at their widgets, their service, their passions, like what they really love to do. But most of them were not very good, terrible, to be frank, at the financial side. You know, whether it was the bookkeeping that they didn't want to do, or they didn't know how to talk to banks, or, you know, couldn't read a financial statement. Small business owners are at a definite disadvantage to bigger corporations that can afford in-house talent, you know, professional CPAs, professional bookkeepers, professional finance people. So that's why I started my firm. I really have a passion to help the small guy. I really believed, I'm a CFA by trade. I love still love future-looking information. And so I really wanted to help people grow their business with budgets, projections, forecasts, helping talk to banks. So we really got into fractional controllership, fractional CFO work in 2080. That's my long-winded way of saying that when it comes to advisory, you know, our firm was almost squarely focused on it. Most of our clients come to us because of it. The major draw for our firm is that kind of information, budgets, forecasts, projections, and I still get comments to this day because I'm still active in it in a part-time basis. People ask, how can we make these bill payments? How can we do this? It's all looking forward. So my life is squarely in the advisory space. We built Helm to essentially solve some of my problems. We just couldn't get these projections and this information and this advice out fast enough, and hence why we built Helm. So that's me. That's why you maybe should listen to me. I'm not a dictator. If you don't want to listen, that's okay. But I love sharing information, and I love helping out other people. So hopefully people can learn from what I've kind of gleaned over the last 4 to 8 years, both in practice, but also on the software side, and take some of those learnings and use it to your advantage. There's a lot of great information out there. I'm certainly not the only person out there with great information. So I'm just another tool at your arsenal. So that's me. Let's talk about you. Part of having a confident conversation in advisory is knowing that you're more qualified than anyone else. We see this quite a bit when we talk to bookkeepers and accountants. They're really good at what they do. They're really good at the bookkeeping. They're really good at the tax returns. They're really good at whatever it is that they do. And not all the time, but sometimes there's some uncertainty around, should I be the one actually having this conversation with my client? And as I said at the start, this is a statement. This is know that you are more qualified than anyone else. And we'll start talking about exactly why. My goal here is to instill confidence so that you can have confident conversations. So I think firstly, I should have actually had another slide here, but firstly, you need to remember that you're a professional. So by trade and by your experience, you've got expertise. You know, you've worked in the trenches, you've worked with a bunch of different clients, you've seen a lot of different things. That gives you the technical knowledge that you need to have these conversations. Because when you're talking about advisory and advice, it's not like you're going to be giving them life coach advice. You're not a psychologist. You know what your wheelhouse is and you know what you're good at and trained in. So you have that skill set. So like technically speaking, you're good. And so moving on from there, you also need to remember that you've got the existing relationship with your client. You know them. You probably know the names of their kids. You know where they went to school. You know how they are as a human, how they act in certain situations, what triggers them, and presumably you like them. I mean, if you don't, then you probably shouldn't be doing extra work for them in terms of advisory, but you know them and you like them. You know their businesses, you know what services they're in, you know what products they produce, you know probably what the business is good at and bad at on a financial basis, because you're continually looking at the numbers. If you're a bookkeeper, you're looking at the transactions. If you're a tax accountant, you're looking at year ends, but you're all seeing performance and you're seeing what's working and what's not on a financial basis, because you've got that technical skill set. You have the ability to see that. So that relationship is super key, because one of the key pieces in advisory is the relationship and knowing the client. So remember that, because we're going to start looking at some data. When we're talking about having confident conversations, that would imply that you're not confident. And so what we're saying here so far is that you have the technical skills. You already know the client and you know them well. And if we look at the data, what it says is, whether you think so or not, the client trusts you. If you look at all small businesses, 31% of them trust their accountants the most. That's out of any other professional. So related to the business. So if you look at lawyers, if you look at business consultants, if you look at coaches, if you look at other family members, was included in the list, accountants and bookkeepers were number one. And so the numbers are telling you that the clients trust you the most. They think you are the bee's knees, so to speak, in terms of the person that should be talking to them. And if you look at some of the other data, it just reinforces that. So 53% of all small business owners strongly agree that their accountant and bookkeeper is a trusted advisor. So somebody that they trust with their business numbers. And that number like almost doubles. Almost everybody strongly agrees that their bookkeeper or accountant is a trusted advisor when they start providing additional services. And so that really brings us to what the data also says, which is, not only do you have the technical expertise, not only do you know your client, not only do they trust you, but they actually want you to talk to them, because the data also says 40% of all small businesses want you doing more for them. 38% would love you doing their payroll, 37% would love help managing their accounts receivable and accounts payable, and 32% would love help with future-looking projections. And that kind of speaks to my experience as a firm owner myself. Not everybody wants this. Let's not kid ourselves when people talk advisory. It is not the be-all end-all for everybody. But more than around 1/3 of people, if you look at those bottom two statistics, want help with their cash. They want help managing their AR and AP, and they want help looking into the future. So part of having that confident conversation is, you got the technical expertise, you know the client likes you, they trust you, and they want you talking to them. So that should hopefully give you enough information and context that you should be willing to have a confident conversation with your clients. And just to kind of reinforce this point, there's a stat that I kind of saw the other day. Selling to an existing customer is 5 times easier than selling to someone brand new. And so I think as professionals, we're always continually in a state of, we need more clients, we need more clients. But the reality is that, and this isn't a sales spiel, this is simply saying that the data is reinforcing everything I just said, which is the clients love you. And this stat just reinforces that by saying that 60 to 70% of them, if you came and sold to 100% of your clients, the vast majority of them would be saying, yes, I would like to do something more with you. Whereas if you did that same service offering to someone brand new, like only 5 to 15% would say yes. And so it just reinforces the fact that if you've got an existing relationship, it's super important. And that really is what you need to know to have a confident client conversation, in my opinion. So to make sure that you're awake, the first interactive question, please feel free to use the chat. The Q&A might be a little bit harder just because I got a lot of screens going on. But if you are considering offering, or if you've considered offering advisory services but haven't yet, what is the biggest hurdle that you're facing? I would love to know different people's perspectives and opinions and thoughts here. So we'll just kind of let people share if they're so willing. Hopefully somebody's willing to share and I'm not boring everybody by droning on here. Time to develop processes. Love it. Time and pricing. These are sounding very familiar. Time is so hard, isn't it? It's a fun one. If there's any other ones, I would love to see them roll in. No secrets here. This is a safe place, everybody. Oh, Danielle's already offering. Good job. Love it. Processing and confidence. And that's fair. That's why I say, Yvonne, it's you don't really know how much you know, but you probably know a lot more than you know too. As zen as that sounds, that's why I went through those numbers. Like if you've been doing it and you have experience, you already have your leaps and bounds ahead of what other people are probably doing. So we've got a few different answers. It's good to see. So of course, that was kind of a leading question because, you know, I've been around the block a few times. Beverly just added a really good one. Beverly, I always love your comments as a side. They're great. She said, often as bookkeepers, we generally have been labeled as just a bookkeeper. And people that know me well, and I really purport and really support the bookkeeper segment because I do believe there's a confidence issue. As maybe Beverly's not really saying confidence issue there, but there's a stigma that bookkeepers are just bookkeepers. And the reality is that anything in advisory is based off a foundation, and that foundation is high quality bookkeeping. And so bookkeepers actually have a natural advantage that other people do not. And it's such a powerful thing to just understand that. You have transactional knowledge and you have knowledge of ebbs and flows through businesses, and you know your clients probably at a psychologist level. I know that I said that you're not psychologists, but sometimes bookkeepers describe themselves as psychologists. It provides tremendous value in terms of offering advisory services because you know the client inside and out, both emotionally and from a business standpoint. So I think that's a good thing to point out, Beverly. That's really great. As you can see on this slide here, some of the common issues that I continually hear about are people are too busy. Time is such a key thing. And I said that Nick Sinclair and Nick Marston are going to be talking about that today. You know, Nick's from TOA. They've got a great company that helps build out support. They've also got an education company that helps people skill up. And Nick is with Xero and Tax Cycle, which, you know, if you can use tools properly, it'll help you become more efficient. Jenny Blake will also be talking about some of that stuff, but I kind of put her in. It's different. And so one of the comments was, you know, I don't know what I don't know. And so part of the conversations that we need to start having as professionals in advisory is be comfortable with change. And Jenny is going to be getting into, you know, being really good at picking who you want to work with, how you want to work with them, and really creating an ideal life. Like change management, I think, is a really great area to be talking about because it gets to, I might not know this. It's like you probably do, and you just need to shift your mindset to actually get there. And I know it sounds really hokey, but if you look at some really successful people, that's typically the only change that they're doing is mindset shift. So, and people that are not sure how to do it, hopefully some of the other information that I will be providing after this will be helpful. So excited about all the panelists again. Beverly said she's often asked to explain why she charges what she does. because the perception aided by marketing by Intuit in the last year, so anyone can do it. 1,000,000% agree. And hopefully if I don't run out of time, we'll get to that on the pricing side of things, because we're talking about value pricing, and value pricing doesn't mean just raise prices until people drop off. There's an actual theory and mindset behind it that we'd like to cover, or I'd like to cover. So moving on, specific questions in terms of having confident conversations, advisory conversations with your client. There's specific questions that you should really be asking, not just the client, but yourself. In order to have effective advisory, there's a framework that you need. And so this is part of the how-to and maybe not knowing how to do things. These are some of the questions that I believe people should be asking. And we're going to start out at a very high level and say, what do clients value? My belief is that as bookkeepers and accountants, we are number people. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it really doesn't matter. We are number people, true and true. And we believe in perfect books and perfect numbers, and we got to reconcile everything. And if that tax number didn't match last year, what's going on? And our minds explode. That's us. That's what we value. And so we really need to take a step back and say, what do the clients value? Because if we're providing advisory services, it's not what we find valuable, it's what they find valuable. And it's probably grossly oversimplifying things, but clients value success. Like if you look at any of the studies that are out there, small business owners want to know how to grow their business. They want to know how to make more money. They want to know how to save more money, whether that's saving costs, becoming more efficient, saving taxes. These are all the things that matter to them. They value success. They value success of themselves and their business. And so to have confident conversations with people, we need effective conversations. And so to be effective, we need to have that value set in mind, and we need to gear or hinge or tie our solutions, like our advice, to those values. And so essentially what I'm saying is, if you have that value framework in mind, or sorry, I'm kind of reading my text and talking ahead of myself, but if you have those values in mind, what the client values, you can reverse engineer the process. And if you look at a typical problem solving framework, there's 3 things that you should look at. It's the problem, the solution, and the action. And so if you know the value, you can kind of reverse engineer that entire process to make highly effective advisory services. And so the key question there, once you kind of know that I should be thinking about the client, specifically in their values, you should actually be asking, what are the client's goals? Because again, if you know their end goals, you'll be able to take that framework, the problem, solution, action framework, and you'll be able to say, all right, well, I'm working in the financials for this tax return. I've already seen previous 3 years, or I'm a bookkeeper and I know, month over month history. You can use your knowledge, your expertise, like your in the trenches expertise and knowledge of the financials to then say, okay, well, if the end goal is I want to make more money, what in the financials are telling me that is stopping that? It could be low margins, it could be high costs, it could be poor pricing, it could be any number of things. But the point there is, once you understand your client's goals, you can work through that framework to start creating advisory services and solutions. So key point there at the very end is plural solutions. We'll get more into it in the pricing and the packaging, but the more that you can come up with more solutions, the more valuable your advisory will be. And then it's just a case of prioritizing it and what you want to do. So essentially, when you look at that framework, the problem, solutions, and actions, we really want to ask, how can the goals of the client be achieved? And so we know what the goal is. We can look in the financials and see what some of the problems are. Now we actually need to think about the solutions. So if I want to make more money as a business owner, what are the problems that are preventing that? What are some of the solutions that I can find? And then that then creates actions. Solutions become actions for the client or yourself to do. And this is where projections really come in. This is why business owners really want projections and future-looking information, at least in my opinion. It's because those projections show them the roadmap. It shows how they can do your advice. They actually can carry out what you're talking about. And if you're tracking it, if you're doing, say, monthly meetings or monthly variance analysis or whatever that looks like, tracking how your solutions are progressing, those actions being carried out are progressing, will reinstill and increase the chances of success. So saying is what can be measured can be improved. If you don't have a roadmap and you can't measure what success is, then you're never going to improve it. And so we always want to be cognizant of having a roadmap. So this is all great in theory, hopefully I wowed you with my intelligence. But let's walk through an actual example. So very simple. Let's take a cash flow projection, because it's really easy for people out there to say, oh, well, your advisory just offer a cash flow projection for $500. Like, well, what is that? If we take a step back and we say, what is the goal of the actual client? It could be, I want more money in the bank. And there could be a multitude of problems. I won't go through them all because it's already 9:30 and I got other stuff to talk about here. But let's say slow invoicing, a problem to having more in the money in the bank. A common problem is people don't invoice on time. And so a solution to that, one solution is just to create a new process. Invoice as soon as an event happens. So say I've got service companies that I work for, and they'll provide the service, and then they won't invoice for 30 days after the fact. And then you've got people's paying cycle that happens after that. So simply only one solution. There's multiple solutions to every problem. Only one solution to that would be bill immediately or bill up front. Like there's two different solutions. That's a solution. And then you can then carry that solution out. You can say, okay, client, all you need to do is this. If you do that, you will have more money in the bank account. That's how that process works. It's very simple. But where the cash flow projection comes in is actually showing how that works. It's like, here's where you're at now. If you implement this change, this is where you'll start earning more money in the bank because your AR will start coming in quicker. And this is where your bank account will end up. So moving on, we're going to talk about how can you leverage year-end to make advisory easier, and specifically, again, cash flow forecasting, cash flow projections, cash management. You can apply this to again, everything in terms of advisory, but there are definitely a lot more benefits to doing this kind of stuff at year-end for forecasting and projections. So year-end is the best time of the year, in my opinion, because a lot of the problems that we have as accountants and bookkeepers is getting data. It's a continual, especially as a bookkeeper, so frustrating to try and get people to give you their backup. It's even though really good clients have issues doing it. So when they typically give you their information is at year-end. And so they're extremely focused. They're getting all of the information that you need. They're giving you all the backup, all the contracts, all the context, everything that you need in order to get your work done, whether you're a bookkeeper or an accountant. They're attentive. They're attentive not only because they got a tax return due or need to do year end, but they probably got auditors, bankers, shareholders, boards, the government, all kind of breathing down their neck to get their year end done. So they're highly attuned to what do I need from you, the professional, to get this job done. And so that essentially puts them in a prime state. And maybe that in of itself doesn't put them into a prime state to receive advice. But typically when year ends occur, people are also doing, go forward planning. They're thinking about what they need to do to improve their business. They're in that mindset. So once you start combining all of that together, the client is in a prime state to receive advice and new information to progress their business. So advisory. And of course, the bulk of the work's done. If you were to try to do a cash flow forecast, say, you call it a three-way financial model, like a huge strategic model in Excel that took you a week to do. If you were to try to do that outside of a year-end time, it would actually be harder because you probably don't have the same level of focus, attentiveness, and information and context. So it'll just be harder. So remember, the bulk of your work is already done. I'll probably go through this a little bit quick just because we've only got a few minutes and I did want to have some Q&A. But essentially, if you're a bookkeeper, what I really wanted to point out is you're working on prepping their data. So you built up the knowledge of the ebbs and flows of money through their business, and you have clean and current data. So that's perfect for cash flow advisory, perfect for forecasts and projections. And so once you provide that handoff package, depending on what your workflow looks like, but if you're handing it off to an accountant, that's a perfect opportunity to talk to your client about, hey, I noticed some of this stuff in your financials. Would you be interested in? And then you can start talking about goals and all of that fun stuff. If you're an accountant, it's similar but different. If you're a true tax accountant, you'll be doing tax returns and other filings. And so you won't have the same ebb and flow and transactional information, but what you will have is context, because the client will be talking to you about, well, I needed to do this in order to do that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So if you're doing a fixed asset section of your tax return, why did you buy that truck? Oh, well, I bought it because. So you're getting context, and you also can see the financial performance, both in this year as well as past years, assuming that you've had previous work with them. So again, for an accountant, having the year-end package is the perfect opportunity to present some advisory. We'll do this quickly, but do people out there use year-end as an opportunity to offer other services to clients? And if so, why? And if not, why not? Just out of curiosity. I feel like I need a music background to, Jeopardy. And yes, Todd, the marketing people will probably slice that and put it on social just for you. All right, not getting much response on that. Oh, there we go. Beverly increases her prices and also includes additional service. Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Marilyn will this year. Great. I will as well. I think our firm's been terrible at it. So that's great. I'm going to quickly move on. So packages and pricing. So this is not a 5-minute topic, but we're gonna blast through it in 5 minutes here. Pricing at a high level. So we've talked about, you are the best person to have this conversation. Your clients want to hear it from you. Year-end is the best time. We've also talked about a simple framework to provide actual valuable advice. How do you price it? Pricing, when you look at it, is just simply how can we get the client to say yes? If you've actually gone through the process and you can find a way to make people more money, as an example, you've got something that's worth something. So it's price is then just the simple equation of at what price will they say yes? And so, of course, as accountants and bookkeepers, our head goes to, well, here's my cost, and this is what it should be. Maybe I'll mark it up by 10%. And that's easy. Cheap is easy. But essentially what you're doing is you're commoditizing your service. And so it's not bad, but it's not great either. And the reason that I say it's not great is because if you're commoditizing your services, think back to what I was talking about with the importance of the client relationship. If you're simply gauging your price based off the time to create, say, a forecast, you've not priced in any client relationship there. And it takes time and effort to build a client relationship. And having that client relationship gives you the information to create the advice. And so it's being cheap is harmful because it doesn't give you the room, it doesn't give you the capacity. And so when people are saying that they're too busy, often, not all the time, but often it's a case of pricing needs to go up so that they can get the extra bandwidth they need, meaning the professional, to properly provide services. So what I'm saying here is that if you're commoditizing your services, you might not be doing yourself a proper service. So of course, we're trying to provide a differentiated service, something that's really customized and valuable to the client. And of course, that needs to be priced properly, which brings us to value pricing. And of course, I put the barf emoticon on because people probably get sick of hearing about value pricing. I do as well, because quite often, and I probably just said it off the cuff, value pricing typically means just charge more. And I think with logical people like ourselves, it doesn't really sit that well. So I like to have frameworks behind stuff and processes. So, value pricing is about getting what you deserve, the value of your work. But what does that actually mean? It's more than just let's charge more. And so I actually took this from a guy called Alex Formosi. You can look him up. He is quite the entrepreneur. He's on social media a ton. And so just like anybody else, you take everybody with a grain of salt, you take pieces here and there. And this is one of the pieces I took from him. He's got a really great framework for what is value. And we got to look at it from the perspective of the client. You know, client doesn't really care about our cost or our time or anything like that. What they say is, what's my dream outcome and what's the potential of it actually happening? And then how long is it going to take to get there? And what do I have to do to get there? And he put this into essentially a formula, and it's not a hard formula. It's not like you put numbers in here and it pumps out a price. It's simply a matrix to say, if this goes up, then you're doing better. And if this goes down, you're doing worse in terms of value. And keep in mind that this is all perception. This is not reality. This is just the client's perception of all of these things. And so again, it's not related to your time or cost. And so I was going to get a little bit more into it, but again, being cognizant of time here, I'll just go into an example to kind of show how this would work. So if we go back to the example, we've kind of iterated through this whole webinar. I, as the business owner, the client, would like more money in the bank. And through the financials, maybe I've got $1 million plus in revenue per year, and a 5% change could get me 50 grand more in the bank. And that would be year over year as a side. So 50 grand is my dream outcome. That's what I would like. And we've gone through the framework and we found some solutions to the problem. And that puts our chance of success at like 80% because there's multiple paths to do it. So I've got a high probability of getting this. So my numerator is quite high. But the point here is that if it takes 20 years to get there, it doesn't matter. It's not valuable to me at all. Here, we're saying it's going to take 3 months, and my perceived time and effort as a client is none. It's minimal. That's got a really high value. That solution is highly valuable to me, and I would probably be willing to pay thousands for that. What that end number is I don't know. But the point there is that maybe it only took me as the advisor a couple hours to actually think about it, and maybe a couple hours to model it out, maybe more. So say you've got a $500 to $1,000 of cost into it. You're leaving room on the table if you're using this framework. Also, another good way to look at it is you have a really low value. Maybe I'll only get 5 grand in the bank account. But if you look at the denominator, if I can get that instantaneously and with no effort, it's still highly valuable. And so I think this is a really good framework to look at pricing with. It's really kind of helped me kind of build out some of our pricing and our services, which gets to packaging. So people might say, packaging, what do you mean? So packaging is just the way that we're structuring our advisory services. And we're essentially saying, how can we present the service that we want to offer? So cash flow forecast, projection, whatever, to our client to increase our chances of success. And packaging really is giving people options. It's structuring the service and then giving 2 to 3 to 4 different options that the client could pick, which then makes them feel better because they've got a say in how things are being done and an option in terms of how they want to work with you, which increases the perceived value of the actual offering. So what does that actually look like? So if we looked at, say, cash flow projections, you could do it as a project, you could do it as recurring work, or you could do it as a premium offering where it's not just recurring work, but maybe you're doing multiple projections ongoing forever. And so you've essentially got 3 different ways to offer the same service. And what this allows us to do is, again, structure our services, because if I'm doing a project, it's going to look different than if I do recurring work, which then looks different if I'm doing recurring work plus every single month. And so it's a good opportunity for you to sit back and say, what do I want to do for the client? Which then allows us to use pricing psychology to push people in certain directions. So if I only wanted project work, I could increase the pricing on, say, recurring work and premium services to make the project look cheap. It has nothing to do with the actual cost or value. I just not jack, it's a bad term because now I'm talking like other people do. I can artificially increase the price on services I don't want people to pick to then guide them towards things that I do want them to pick. So that's packaging at a very, very high level. An example on a cash flow forecast offering would be package A, one-time forecast. Package B, recurring with tracking, so making sure that they're actually doing the action that you set up, or the premium offering, package C, as we briefly touched on, recurring updates, but then you're actually finding new solutions in the future with the tracking. So that allows, if I was a client, I could say, yeah, package C sounds amazing because you did so good on your last project that I want this now. So it increases the value just by providing optionality. So we're going to have a quick Q&A here, but before we get there, do people have a pricing and packaging strategy at their firms? And if so, why or why not? Just out of curiosity. And as we answer that, I'm just going to say the recap. You know, we've talked about why you are the most qualified person, specific questions you should be asking, why you're in the best, and how you can price and package. And here's the final Q&A, and feel free to use the chat. And so we've got a lot of people saying in terms of pricing and packaging, they've got a process or a philosophy, or they're just developing it. Or some people have tried and never had it. Sandy said she's actually got one. And so Sandy, I'd be curious, just to pick on you a bit, like, do you find that that's been helpful in terms of kind of guiding your firm? As I know from my personal experience, having packages really provides a good line of sight on what we should be doing as a team. I've got team members, and so having them know exactly what they should be doing when and how, the packages help frame that. So I'd be curious Sandy, what your thoughts are on that. And you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. I'm just picking on you. That being said, you know, if anybody has any other questions, we will probably leave it open here for a few minutes before I let people hop off, go to the bathroom and grab a new coffee, and then move on to the next session. And of course, I need to say my shameless plug. You know, if people are looking for an easier way to do cash flow forecasting, please check out our website, www.takethehelm.app, and or talk to one of our sales team members, and we can help you. Yeah, so one comment is, I think disconnecting price from cost is the hardest thing to do for a firm and people. It is the biggest issue for sure. It is also, I think, the reason that a lot of people have a significant lack of time, because it's so easy to do. It's so easy to say, man, I really want this client or need this client, depending on your situation as a firm or a practitioner. And your tendency is to just drop the price immediately. And of course, if you keep doing that, it just means that you're working harder probably than you should be relative to the effort that you're putting out, the value that you're getting, the price that you're getting relative to the value that you're putting out is not high enough. And so pricing is so key. It's and having a pricing strategy, I think, is really important. And to those people that are, you know, just building it out, take some time, you know, take a day or two, build it out and try it. You know, the worst thing that can happen is the same thing happens. But the best thing that could happen is that you improve your pricing and your bandwidth and your capacity, and you start gaining some time back. What I found with our clients is you get better clients with higher pricing. So to go back to Alex Hermosi, you know, he's a believer that if you start charging more, you're moving out of the commoditized service offering, and you start getting people that value time in a different way. So, and that's ultimately what a lot of value price practitioners aim at and talk about. And it is true, at least in my experience. So I'm a purporter as well. If there's no other questions, though, I think we'll leave it at that because it's 10:02. So I want to say thank you to everybody for participating. Hopefully you found some good value out of this session, and I know the next 3 sessions will be great as well. Hopefully you liked mine, so hopefully mine was great. But the next 3 sessions will be amazing. I think we're so fortunate to have these people giving us their time to provide some insights and advice and all that fun stuff. So please take the opportunity to check them all out and have a great day if I don't talk to people. So order of operations here is I will be hopping off, setting up the next session in a completely different webinar link. You should have that, and we'll go from there. So thanks, Todd. Thanks for the great conversations as always. Yes, Sandy, 100% agree. We sell value and answers. We are in the business of selling solutions, not our time. All right. Thanks, everybody.